Lightning will never strike the same spot twice. Not true. The Empire State Building was once struck 8 times in only 24 minutes. There was a terrible storm, and nothing could or can generally keep lightning away from the place that got hit. If a struck place has features that attracted the lightning in the first place, like terrain shape, standing water, or height, it may attract it once again. You have so much DNA in your body that you can actually stretch it from the Sun to Pluto and back. True. And not just once, 17 times. Of course, you're not going to look the same after you do that. Crocodiles are one of the oldest species in the world. Yup. They have been around for 200 million years already. Like my neighbors down the street. Opossums sleep while hanging by their tails. You can see that in cartoons and some photos, but in general, they don't. Their tails are really strong, so these animals can grip branches and hold their weight, but only for short periods. Adults are really too heavy to stay in this position for too long, so they wouldn't get much rest. Goldfish have a 3-second-long memory. Nope. Those colorful fish are actually really smart. One study showed goldfish could tell the difference between 2 classical songs. They're not quick learners, true, but after over 100 sessions, they did it, which wouldn't be possible if their memory could really last only for 3 seconds. One type of salamander, you can read that on your own, go ahead, can extend its tongue over half of its body length in only 7 milliseconds. True. That's 50 times faster than a blink of an eye. Ooh, gotta be fast to catch that tongue map. People can multitask. Not true. Checking emails, talking on the phone, cooking, it seems like doing several things at the same time saves time, but research shows multitasking is not quite possible. Our brain is wired to do one thing at a time. So when we think we're multitasking, it's actually switching tasks, which can take even longer rather than saving us some time, as well as whittling down our attention spans. Earth is not the only planet with water. NASA discovered Jupiter had an ocean with twice as much water as we have on our planet. It's right under a layer of ice. Even Mars has some liquid water flowing. Also, the Earth is round. Or is it? Technically, it has flattened poles, together with a bulge at the equator. That way, it has an irregular shape of an ellipsoid. Zombies are not made up. True. Okay, humans can't turn into ones as we see in movies, but the animal kingdom has its zombies. For instance, there's a type of fungus that takes over ants, spreading specific chemicals in their brains. That makes an ant leave its family looking for the place where this fungus wants to live. The world's biggest waterfall is under the ocean. Oh, very true. It's in the Nordic seas. The cold seawater is denser than the warm waterfall. The drop is almost 2 miles long. The smallest wasp in the world is not bigger than an amoeba. True. This wasp has the same body parts as other bugs, like eyes, wings, brain, legs, and more, but it's just 0.008 inches long, which, in most cases, makes it smaller than one-celled organisms we also know as amoebas. Snow can only be white. Not true. And I'm not talking about the snow near fire hydrants. For example, there are some mountains with pink snow, like the Sierra Nevada in California. Its color is caused by a certain type of algae living there. Aurora borealis has a sister. True. It's called Aurora australis, and you can see it in the southern hemisphere. The best time to see it is in winter. Over 99% of atoms is empty space. True. If we collected all the people in the world together and removed all the empty space between the atoms out of them, the population of Earth would fit into the size of an average orange. I think we should try that. Then I could finally get a seat on the bus. Dolphins communicate and call each other by names. True. They use specific vocal whistles to identify each other. So long, and thanks for all the fish. The toilet flushes in different directions when on different hemispheres. Nope. The direction is the same whether the toilet is in Australia or France. Really? A snail can have a pretty extended nap. True. Some snails can sleep for around 3 years in a row. Sharks smell just one tiny drop of blood from miles away. Not quite. Sure, their brain region in charge of smelling odors is enlarged, but the ocean is really big. Plus, it takes time for odor molecules to spread in liquid. On a pretty good day with favorable currents, a shark may smell the prey from a distance of a couple of football fields away, but not miles. Finally, penguins propose to their significant other. True. They're monogamous, and after choosing a mate, the male gives the female a pebble to show his affection. Aww. Check this out! Each zebra has its own unique pattern of stripes, just as people have their own unique fingerprints. Is it just a myth, or is it the truth? What do you think? It's true. Stripes on each zebra form a unique pattern, so it's impossible to find two zebras that are exactly the same. The stylish black and white pattern serves as an optical illusion to confuse and scare away their key enemies, predators and annoying insects such as tsetse flies or horseflies. Zebras are probably aware of how fabulous they are because they take time to groom one another. So, if you ever see two zebras standing close to one another, they aren't biting each other, it's a friendly beauty routine. Unlike humans, zebras can't scratch themselves on their own that easily, so they're just pulling loose hairs off each other. I do that. Although zebras live in herds, they usually create smaller family groups, a male, several females, and their offspring. And each member of that group is unique when it comes to their stripe patterns. All bats are blind. Would you buy it? Nah, it's just a myth. Being blind as a bat is a figure of speech, and it comes from the assumption that bats cannot see properly. In ancient times, also known as before the 21st century, people used to think that bats were blind, judging these charismatic creatures by their weird flight patterns. Many bats do use echolocation to navigate, but still, all of them can see. Here comes the next one. Lobsters are monogamous and stay together for a lifetime. True or false? What do you say? Well, sorry to spoil the romance, but it's just a myth made popular by a famous TV show. In real life, lobsters aren't monogamous at all. Dominant male lobsters mate with several females, and then, one by one, they vanish, only to reappear on a restaurant table with melted butter. No worries, the animal kingdom still has some hopeless romantics that remain faithful to their mates throughout their lives. Swans, gray wolves, beavers, bald eagles, gibbons, to name a few. You can get warts from handling frogs or toads. What do you think about this rumor? It's an old myth, probably related to the fact that both toads and frogs have bumps on their skin. Visually, these bumps remind of warts, but they're just glands that never secrete any substances that could cause humans to get warts. There are no amphibians that can give you warts, but shaking hands with another human who has them can. Moving on, turtles live inside their shells, and they can go outdoors anytime. Is it true or false? It's a myth. Those fairy tale and cartoon turtles pop out of their shells whenever they like. But in fact, saying that turtles live inside their shells is like saying that people live inside their own skin. A shell isn't just a separate empty space that serves as a costume. Although turtles can tuck their limbs inside for protection, it's actually an integral part of the turtle's anatomy. Take a look at the actual structure of its skeleton. The shell is fused to the bones of the skeleton, and the turtle can't live without it. The same goes for tortoises. One major key difference between turtles and tortoises is that tortoises spend most of their time on land, while turtles are designed to hang out in the water. That's why turtles have thinner and more water-dynamic shells, and tortoises' shells are more rounded and domed. Next, koalas' fingerprints are indistinguishable from humans. Does this sound realistic? Although it definitely sounds like it's made up, in fact, it's true. If you compare a human fingerprint to a koala's, you'd hardly be able to tell the difference even under a microscope. When scientists made this discovery, they warned the police because these fluffy little cuties are really capable of confusing forensics at crime scenes. The smart guys suppose that the koala's fingertip features have recently improved independently in their evolutionary history. Koalas' relatives like kangaroos and wombats don't have the same features. Koalas probably developed these complicated fingerprints because they help them grip onto leaves and branches more easily. Koalas are known as super fussy eaters. In fact, they prefer eucalyptus leaves of a particular age. Their sensitive fingers may have evolved as a tool to spot out the right leaves by their texture. Koalas aren't the only mammals with human-like fingerprints, by the way. Finger patterns of chimps and gorillas are also pretty complex. Ready to move on to the next rumor? Ostriches put their heads in the sand to hide from predators. Myth or true? What do you say? Nah, that's just a myth. Ostriches don't stick their heads in the sand when threatened. In fact, these guys don't bury their heads whatsoever. This myth has spread, thanks to that famous idiom, to hide one's head in the sand. In real life, ostriches have to dig holes in the sand for their eggs because they're flightless birds. To make sure they're evenly heated, ostriches put their heads in there to rotate the eggs from time to time. But ostriches still have some escaping mentality. When they face some threat, they can flop to the sand and stay perfectly still, pretending they aren't alive. Goldfish can't remember anything for longer than a second. Can it really be that bad? If you often say you have a goldfish memory as an excuse for forgetting something important, I have some bad news for you. Multiple studies have proven that goldfish can remember things for several months, if not more. Scientists from an Israeli university held the cutest experiment. For 1 month, they turned on classical music while feeding the fish. They believe that this practice would teach the fish to associate the melody with food. In 5 months, after the end of that training period, the fish still got excited and started looking for food every time they heard the music piece that had played earlier. Ah, Mozart! Hey, where's my food? It's not clear exactly where this myth came from or why it's so popular, but some people suggest that goldfish owners started it as they felt guilty about keeping their pets in tiny bowls. Cats and dogs are colorblind. Any thoughts on this one? Well, that's not true. Cats and dogs have much better color vision than we thought. This myth is probably just an exaggeration of the fact that each animal perceives colors differently than people. Studies reveal that both cats and dogs can see in green and blue. They also have more light-sensing cells in their eyes, also known as rods, than humans do. It means that cats and dogs can see way better in low light spaces. Dogs' eyes have fewer cones, those color-sensing cells. That's why scientists believe that dogs' approximate color vision is only about 1/7 as vibrant as humans. Sharks can only breathe and stay alive when they swim. Does this one sound real to you? According to a popular misbelief, sharks can breathe only while moving because swimming helps them push water over their gills. Although many kinds of sharks are designed this way, many others, like bottom-dwelling nurse sharks, don't need swimming to pump oxygen-rich water over their gills. Meanwhile, all sharks do lack swim bladders, so if they stop swimming, they'll probably sink to the bottom. But luckily, a shark's body can't be compressed. That's why rapid descents or ascents are safe for them. Sea otters hold hands so they don't drift apart while sleeping. Can you believe that? Yep, it's true. You can keep awing at it, but in fact, this way of sleeping has a practical purpose for them. Scientists suggest that sea otters develop this cute habit to stay close with their mating partners. If you hold your otter girlfriend's hand tightly all night, it will reduce the risk of her mating with another male while you're sleeping. Shameless. Also, holding hands helps otters to protect themselves from predators because they stay away from the land altogether. Now, if a human touches a bird nestling, its mother will abandon it. Myth or truth? What do you think? Luckily, it's just a myth. In fact, parent birds don't recognize their younglings by smell. So, feel free to put the cuties back in the nest. And always hang on to your otter girlfriend so you won't get eaten. Good advice. Water doesn't, in fact, conduct electricity well, but it's only true about distilled or pure water. People can get an electric shock while being in electrified water, but that's because pure water doesn't exist in nature. It usually contains dirt, minerals, sand, and other stuff great at conducting electricity. The vacuum of space is not always cold. It depends on where you measure its temperature. If it's a totally freezing part of our universe, the vacuum of space can get as cold as minus 454 degrees. But if you travel closer to the sun, your thermometer will show a boiling 250 degrees. By the way, it's the reason why astronauts wear white spacesuits. They reflect sunlight and don't let people inside get too hot. There's a misconception that mustard seeds are the tiniest ones out there. But in reality, there are smaller seeds, for example, those of watermeal, poppy, or duckweed. And the tiniest seed on record is that of the orchid. You can relax, coffee doesn't make you dehydrated. This drink does have a slight diuretic effect, but scientists haven't found any evidence that coffee drinkers have a higher risk of dehydration than, let's say, tea drinkers. Now, elephants aren't afraid of mice per se, but these massive animals have bad vision. They also move fairly slowly. That's why they can get startled by a bird or a small creature, like a mouse, darting past them. Just the element of surprise, nothing more. Brown bread might not be healthier than white one. The loaf you've bought can be brown, but it doesn't automatically mean it's 100% whole wheat. If you want to buy a healthy and nutritious product, always read labels and check what the main ingredients are. It should be whole wheat or wholemeal flour. Most people are sure there are just 3 states of matter: solid, liquid, and gas. I am an expert in gas. But people tend to forget about plasma. Unlike what we see in sci-fi movies, plasma isn't some goo or gel-like substance. It's rather superheated electrons and ions, often called ionized gas. Almost any element can turn into plasma if you heat it enough. But then, its molecules will break down and it won't be the same element anymore. For example, if you want to turn water into plasma, it'll no longer be H2O, and you won't want to drink it. That's for sure. There's almost no difference between how fast salty water and pure water will boil. The temperature of salt water will get higher faster, it's true, but salty water also has a higher boiling point. Plus, when you add salt to the same volume of water, its mass becomes greater and it takes longer for it to boil. Bananas do not grow on trees. The banana tree might get as large as a real tree, up to 25 feet, but it's a plant, the world's largest perennial herb. This plant doesn't have any woody fibers and can't be considered a tree. It also has massive stalks and leaves, but no trunk and branches. There's a misconception that diamonds come from coal, but in reality, they're compressed carbon that gets heated at more than 90 miles below the surface of our planet. As for coal, it's found a mere 2 miles down. Georgia is known as the Peach State, but it's California that grows the largest number of peaches in the U.S. For example, in 2017, this state produced more than 540,000 tons of peaches, while Georgia isn't even in the top 3 producers. Isn't that peachy? Some people believe that duck quacks don't echo. It's not so. All sounds ducks make, including squeaks, honks, or yelps, create sound waves that bounce off a hard surface, producing an echo. The myth itself appeared because of the landscape of the ponds where most ducks live. The area is usually flat, and there's nothing for the sound waves to get reflected by. Even with hills or mountains around, though, the sounds ducks make would be too faint to create a loud echo. But this can refer to any sound. There are tons of diets that encourage you to cut carbs from your meals. But this food group is your body's main source of energy. It's also not always fattening. Everything depends on how much of carbohydrates you consume. Eating too much of them will, of course, lead to weight gain. But instead of avoiding carbs altogether, you can focus on eating their healthy variations. They can be beans, lentils, corn, cereals, wholemeal bread, and so on. Your pooch does not see the world in black and white. Specialists claim that dogs' vision isn't the same as people have, and they don't see all the hues you do, but still, they can distinguish between colors. Some people wear hats in the winter only because they believe that 90% of their body heat escapes through their heads. But you only lose about 10% of your body heat there. That's not more than what you'd lose through another uncovered part of your body. For example, your ankles, neck, or hands. The Bermuda Triangle is believed to be a harrowing patch of the ocean. Sailors and pilots are prone to lose contact with the rest of the world and disappear there for good. But that's not just an intriguing legend. The truth is that the Bermuda Triangle does not have any more shipwrecks or mysterious disappearances than other waterways. Ooh. An apple a day will not keep doctors away. They will still call to confirm your appointment. An apple is a wonderful fruit, packed with fiber and vitamin C. It's also true that both these components are crucial for your long-term health. But they aren't the only ones you need. Plus, if certain bacteria or viruses enter your system, apples won't help you, no matter how many you eat. The Great Wall of China isn't the only human-made structure visible from space. If you're 180 miles above the surface, it's very distinguishable. But from up there, you can also see highways, bridges, dams, airports, and other huge constructions. And if you go further to space, you'll only see the wall in radar images, not with the unaided eye. Sign language isn't universal. In different countries and regions, there are different variations. For example, in the US, people use ASL, which stands for American Sign Language. It's based on a one-handed finger-spelling alphabet. And in the UK, they have BSL, British Sign Language. It uses a two-handed alphabet. It's a popular belief that organic food is more nutritious and pesticide-free. But in reality, there are pesticides approved for use in organic farming. They're naturally derived, but sometimes just as harmful to the environment as their synthetic analogs. On the other hand, the amount of chemicals on both organic and non-organic foods is so low that it's safe to eat both kinds. And no study has proved that organic products are more nutritious either. Lightning can actually strike the same place twice or at least hit very close to the first spot, which means that it's extremely unsafe to try to escape danger by hiding in the spot struck by a lightning bolt. Find shelter, do not touch anything metal or electrical, and stay away from windows. So, you probably think it's sugar that causes your headaches, but in reality, the culprit may be a fast drop in your blood sugar levels. In some people, a meal heavy in carbohydrates leads to excess production of the hormone insulin. Glucose levels drop, and a person develops a headache. Natural sugars like honey are believed to be better than processed sugar. But scientists are sure that the biological effect of corn syrup that is high in fructose is almost the same as that of honey. The only problem is that candies and other sweet things contain more sugar per serving. And this also means more calories. Eating ice cream isn't likely to make your cold worse. Well, that's a relief. Some people believe that dairy products increase mucus production, but experts claim it's not true. On the contrary, frozen dairy foods can soothe a sore throat. Plus, ice cream can provide you with calories you wouldn't eat otherwise. Tons of people believe that toilet seats are swarming with germs. It's true that bathrooms aren't the most sanitary places, but toilet seats are cleaner than, let's say, our cell phones. Yeah. Since toilets are often washed and disinfected, there are statistically 10 times fewer germs on them than on our most used gadgets. Egad! It's common knowledge that people have 5 empirical senses: sound, touch, sight, taste, and smell. But it's not exactly true. There are at least 4 additional senses you have. That makes sense. You also have the sense of your orientation in space, the sense of temperature, the sense of balance, and the sense of your physiological condition. Now, your muscles will not cramp if you swim right after having a meal. Your body will require additional blood to digest all this food, but it won't be enough to stop the muscles in your legs and arms from working in the way they should. People use much more than 10% of their brain. Your brain is busy all day and all night. It needs about 20% of your body's resources and never ever turns off completely. Each part of your brain performs its own function even when you aren't paying attention. White eggs are no less healthy than brown ones. The color of an egg's shell depends on the kind of chicken that laid it. The nutritional value of the egg has much to do with what the hen has been eating. A mother bird will never reject its little one, even if it has been touched by a human. Almost all birds have a poor sense of smell. That's why the bird simply won't know the difference. You don't have to struggle to gulp down 8 glasses of water every day. The volume of water you need depends on different factors. Among them, your overall health, the levels of your activity, and the region where you live. It's not the moon's gravity that causes the tides. Earth's natural satellite does pull on the water in the oceans, but this tug is more than 100 million times weaker than the gravitational pull of our planet. What creates the tidal force is the gravity interplay between the Earth, Moon, and the Sun. Plus, it's more of a push than a pull. There's a misconception that carbonated water doesn't hydrate you as well as flat one. Many studies prove this fact wrong. For example, the participants of one of them kept cycling until they sweated off 4% of their body weight. Then they immediately had a drink. First time, it was flat water. Second time, they drank carbonated water. Then they were given sugar water. And after that, it was carbonated sugar water. It turns out carbonation didn't make any difference in how effectively the participants got rehydrated. Mount Everest is considered to be the tallest mountain on Earth. But it's only true if we speak about its height above sea level. If we take a base to summit height, the tallest peak on the planet is Mauna Kea on the Hawaiian Islands. Everest rises to 29,035 feet above sea level. For Mauna Kea, this number is a mere 13,800 feet. But it also extends 19,700 feet below the Pacific Ocean, which means that a larger part of it is submerged, and the mountain's total height is 33,500 feet. That's nearly a mile taller than Everest. The chameleon can change its color, but this creature does it not to camouflage itself. It can't even spell camouflage. Hey, neither can I. The color change helps the animal regulate its temperature and communicate with peers. It's not the temperature that defines deserts, it's a lack of precipitation. Most well-known deserts are hot, it's true, but some of them are freezing cold. They're called polar deserts. You can find them in Greenland and Antarctica. Right-brained people are analytical, and those who are left-brained are creative. Or at least that's what most of us think. It is true that different hemispheres of your brain are more engaged in certain tasks. For example, your left hemisphere is in charge of languages. But no study has ever found out that people can have right or left brain dominance. When most dogs pant, their tongues hang out of their mouths. That's why many people think that's how they sweat. In reality, dog sweat glands are located on their paw pads. Plus, there are other sweat glands all over their bodies. Dogs pant to evaporate moisture from their nasal passages, tongues, and the lining of their lungs. This also helps them to cool down. Giraffes sleep much more than 30 minutes a day, but probably not as much as you do. Their sleeping pattern is quite typical. After researchers monitored a herd of giraffes, they found out they slept at night and took short naps in the afternoon. In total, each giraffe had around 5 hours of sleep every day. When you call someone using your cell phone, the signal doesn't go through a satellite. Your device is constantly looking for wireless radio signals. Then it transmits data to and from land-based cellular towers. Let's say you call your friend. Then the nearest tower connects you to another cell through a huge network of tower-to-tower connections. There's a myth that your blood will turn blue if it runs out of oxygen, but this misconception is based on an optical illusion. Blood might look blue because you see it through layers of tissue, which makes it appear to be a different color. Not all comets have tails. It depends on a comet's location. If it's somewhere far away from a star, it'll look like a small frozen chunk of ice and rock. But once it approaches a star, the ice starts scattering away because of the solar radiation. This looks like a tail. Sometimes a comet's tail is too faint for you to see. It's impossible to see millions of stars, even on the clearest night or when you're far away from any sources of light. The highest number you can spot if you're lucky and have good eyesight is around 3,000. These stars are the ones that are closest to our planet and bright enough. Lots of the luminous objects you see in the sky are artificial satellites, planets, and distant galaxies. People can grow new brain cells. You don't start life with the same set of brain cells you'll ever have. There's a lot of proof that your brain keeps producing new cells even when you're a grown-up. At least this process goes on in certain regions of your brain. Hey, doesn't that give you hope? You might leave wasps alone, but don't be so sure they'll do the same. Bees do respect human boundaries, and if you bother them, they won't hurt you. But wasps are so bad-tempered they can sting you even if you're just walking by their nest. The asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter isn't a region of randomly floating and constantly colliding large rocks. If you ever found yourself there, you'd see how empty and calm it is. The asteroids are so far apart from each other that the chances of collision are laughably small. If you were traveling by a spaceship, its radar would easily detect asteroids and help you avoid them. Honey can actually spoil if you leave it uncovered in a humid environment. Make sure to always keep the lid on the product and don't let any water get inside. Then your honey will be edible for a really long time. Its antibacterial properties won't let any organisms grow in there. The moon doesn't really have a dark side. Our natural satellite is tidally locked with Earth. That's why we always see just one side of it. The sun, the moon, and our planet are all constantly moving. Sometimes that one side of the moon that's always visible to us is brightly lit. Then the far side is dark, and vice versa. Hey, I hope you found this illuminating. Now, at some earlier stages of research, scientists reconstructed the Megalodon looking like a bigger, just a little more dangerous, version of a great white shark. Movies then followed suit, added a couple of details on their own, and ta-da! We've got a marine giant that could grow up to 90 feet long. Well, hold on. Megalodons were usually between 50 and 55 feet, sometimes growing up to 60 feet. For comparison, a bowling lane is 60 feet long, a school bus is around 45 feet, and an average person is 5 feet 10 inches tall. So yeah, not bad Megalodon, but still not 90 feet. Its weight was around 50 to 60 tons, which is something like 10 adult elephants or even a Boeing 737. That's just their females though. The ladies were almost twice as big as the males. Another movie versus reality thing. The Megalodon had nothing to do with a great white shark. The closest they could be is cousins, because Megalodon, in fact, is the last descendant of a completely different lineage of sharks. Plus, its kind is around 3 times bigger than an average great white. It has a shorter nose and a much flatter jaw that almost looks like it's squashed. Also, Meg's pectoral fins are longer than those of the great white sharks. Ancient predators ate a lot, so they needed something to support their weight. They both had an excellent sense of smell, though, so even in prehistoric times, it wasn't a good idea to go swimming with a chunk of raw meat in hand. And it certainly isn't safe now. Whether the Meg's hiding somewhere in the depths, which some still believe is true, or it's gone forever, younger cousins will be there waiting. Also, both of them like to go after big marine mammals, so they would certainly have things to do together. That is, until the Meg got moody and accidentally ate its friend. You never know. These guys had a different hunting style. Great whites prefer to dive straight toward their prey and find the softest spots, like exposed legs or underbelly. Megalodon aimed for the fins and tail because of its almost 10-foot jaws and what's considered to be the strongest bite ever. Its teeth could pierce almost anything. Sometimes an entire tooth would be found embedded in the bone of some bigger animal, such as a whale. Without the main parts they use for swimming, poor sea animals were then helpless and unable to escape. Yet whales were just a smaller part of the Megalodon's diet. Seals, sea cows, squids, dolphins, other sharks, the good old Meg probably wouldn't say no to some random school of smaller fish swimming into its mouth either. Nothing better than a good snack after a big tasty dinner. Even those giant turtles weren't safe within their thick shells. The Meg probably took those as a dare challenge on a daily basis. Such a diverse diet, and in big amounts. Megalodon would eat about 2,500 pounds of food every day. No wonder it dominated the ocean. Almost 300 teeth in 5 rows. And we're talking about sharp chompers that could grow up to 7 inches long. Even its name stands for giant tooth. Hey, I'm thinking maybe it had a cousin, orthodontia, which means either crooked teeth or deep pockets. Still, Megalodon would change thousands of teeth over a lifetime. Since Meg's teeth weren't that strong, they would often fall out. Then it would get new ones within 1 to 2 days, so it could continue its hunting sessions without any serious interruptions. The same thing happens with modern sharks as well. New teeth replace damaged or worn-out ones. Those teeth falling out were the only thing that helped scientists do any research on the Megalodon at all. They found them all around the world. Yep, Megalodons were quite some travelers. They lived in all oceans, and their fossils were found on all continents except Antarctica. What, too cold? Since their skeletons were not made of bone but of cartilage, teeth are the only evidence they've ever even existed. They gave scientists an insight into a lot of things, including size. Even with modern sharks, scientists determine their size by the dimensions of only one tooth, and do the same with the Meg. Megalodon had the strongest bite of all living creatures on Earth. It would definitely be fun to see the clash between the Meg and, say, T-Rex. Sadly, they missed their chance to meet and establish some long-term friendship since dinosaurs went extinct over 60 million years ago. Meg, on the other hand, terrified all the inhabitants of the seas and oceans from 23 to 2.5 million years ago. Where could Megalodon live these days? Well, it would probably love the places modern sharks go to, such as Florida, Hawaii, Brazil, South Africa, or some other tropical paradise. When you think about it, it's not bad at all. Meg, take me with you! Meg itself didn't have any serious competition or a natural enemy, but its infants were too weak to defend themselves. That's why the apex predator had to choose warm, shallow waters with no strong currents to raise its babies. Those, by the way, were around 6.5 feet long, not quite tiny themselves. Scientists actually found some of their juveniles' teeth, so it seems like part of their nursery areas was the coast of Panama, and that's 10 million years old. Okay, time to meet with one of Megalodon's potential rivals, the mighty sperm whale. 45 to 60 feet long, the size sure makes it quite an adversary. Modern sperm whales don't have such big teeth, but their ancestors, which lived around 13 million years ago, were well packed. The largest tooth found was 5 inches wide and 14 inches long. That's something like the biggest soda bottle out there. That would make an interesting combat. Here, we're talking about this giant marine predator, but this is not the only intriguing ancient animal that wandered the oceans. In fact, sharks are some of the oldest creatures on our planet, more ancient than insects, mammals, dinosaurs, even trees. Mass extinction events wiped out most life on Earth. Giant asteroids fell on its surface, continents split up, and so many other things happened. But sharks were there, alive, persevering, apparently with no contact with the outside world, just chilling and doing their thing. The spiny shark was actually one of the first animals with a jaw. Not that it could do much with that jaw, since it was only around 12 inches long. Meg wouldn't even bother around this one, and it wasn't even a real shark, it just looked like one. If you ever wondered how a combination of eel and shark would look like, well, here it is. Eel shark preferred freshwater, was up to 3 feet long, and went extinct around 200 million years ago. Since dinosaurs appeared around 230 million years ago, the eel shark was probably there to give them warm welcome, prepare a buffet, but the dinosaurs had unfortunately mistaken it for dessert. Now, this predator would get some real screams on a nice sandy beach during a spring break if it was still alive, the Ginsu shark. It was nicknamed after Ginsu knives for a huge mouth of almost 500 razor-sharp teeth. One of this monster shark's hobbies was to go after big turtles. Okay, now seriously, what's with that shark turtle thing? Scissor-toothed sharks. Now we're talking. These guys lived around 300 million years ago and had some strangely shaped heads. The weirdest part were their jaws. This shark didn't shed old and worn-out teeth, but kept growing new ones at the back. Those in the front were then pushed forward, and with age, the shark got a really strange scissor-tooth look. Scientists are still unsure why it had to be like that. Hey, time to call in the orthodon. Even during the Meg's long reign, our favorite ancient predator still wasn't the only scary giant shark in town. For instance, I can't pronounce its name, so I'll just call it Mr. C. Unfortunately, not enough of its fossils were found to get more information, but some research says it had teeth more than 5 inches long. That also implies it could probably grow to be 20 feet long. Oh, and if it only left just a couple more teeth around, I guess the Meg wouldn't be the only movie star from those times. So close, C, so close. Now, as much as we love epic space battles with blasters cutting through the black void and causing cheerful booms, that's not exactly what happens when something explodes in the big black. Space is basically vacuum, meaning it has no oxygen, and oxygen is an essential part of any process of burning we have here on Earth. You might argue that stars can burn and explode into supernova, but that's not exactly true either. Stars don't rely on oxygen, so they're not burning. There are constant thermonuclear reactions going on inside them. So a spaceship can only explode like that if it has a nuclear power plant installed in it. If it doesn't, then the only special effect you get is a brief flash that disappears in the blink of an eye. Liquid oxygen, which is often on board spaceships, is very quick to burn out in the vacuum of outer space. As for the boom, oxygen plays a crucial role here too. Sound only travels thanks to molecules of air bumping into each other. Since there's no air in space, the whole scene would be pretty much absolutely silent. And that's not a bad thing either. Just imagine how deafening would the sun be if the sound could travel in space. Despite what many sci-fi directors want us to believe, there's no dark side to the moon. Our satellite is tidally locked with Earth, meaning it's always turned to us with one side, while the other always looks away. The sun is much farther from us than the moon, and we're both turning round and round, warming and lighting this side and that in turn. It means that once in every short while, the moon is lit by the sun from either side. It's just that we can't see it from where we are. While things appear weightless in outer space, there's actual gravity all over the place. It becomes weaker the further you get from a heavy object, like our planet, but it's still there. In fact, there's not a single place in the universe that isn't affected by gravity of this or that cosmic object. Everything that has mass has gravity as well. Yes, even you and me. But space objects are so massive that they tug smaller things towards them. That's why the planets of the solar system orbit around the Sun, and our whole Milky Way galaxy orbits around its own center. Scientists believe there's a supermassive black hole there, about 4 million times heavier than the Sun, which keeps all the stars and systems from flying apart. Our movie hero leaves the orbit of Mars on their trusty spaceship and heads on towards Jupiter. Their face is grim and determined, even though they know what threat awaits them ahead – the asteroid belt. They pitch and yaw, dodging the asteroid flying at enormous speeds toward the spacecraft, but one of them still hits it. No, just a scratch, thankfully. Finally, our hero leaves the danger zone and wipes the sweat from the brow with a shaking hand. Sounds familiar, but couldn't be further from the truth. Asteroids in the belt between Mars and Jupiter are so few and far between that if you ever travel through it, you might not even encounter one the whole way. There are about 1.5 million sizable space rocks flying there, give or take 500,000. But let's not forget, space is a vast place. The distance between two asteroids of any significant size would be millions of miles. So a space chase with two ships weaving between floating rocks would be quite boring in there. Space is often depicted as a black, cold, and desolate place, especially when a movie astronaut leaves the safety of their spaceship. Everything about this description is okay, except for the cold part. It's only true if you find yourself in some really far corner of our galaxy that has no nearby stars. But if you're, for example, in the Earth's orbit and directly facing the Sun, the temperature in the cosmic vacuum could reach a scorching 250 degrees. That's why spacesuits are white. This color reflects light better than any other. Still, the temperature at your back, which isn't exposed to the sun's rays, can be really freezing indeed. Heat doesn't spread equally through space, so if you're not turned towards a heat source, you get very, very cold. Speaking about the sun, it somehow always appears yellow in movies. The fact is, the color we see from Earth is an optical illusion created by our planet's atmosphere, just as the blue sky during the day. The light from the sun spreads in the atmosphere and gets distorted, making colorful spectacles at dawn and dusk. In the vacuum of space, there's nothing to reflect the light, so the sun appears as it really is – white. That ball of glowing gas is that hot. There's a bright flash in the sky, followed by a tail of smoke, and a red-hot space rock crashes into the ground, leaving a huge, charred crater after impact. Well, although the smoky tail and the crater are partly true, meteorites don't really have a chance to become that hot while falling. Meteorite is an asteroid that somehow entered the Earth's atmosphere and survived the friction enough to fall on the surface. This happens pretty often. We just don't usually see those rocks because they're normally quite small and fall into uninhabited areas. But even if one falls within a city, the crater would appear because of the sheer speed of the meteorite, not its heat. They do get much hotter because of friction, yet not so much as to burn everything on the ground on impact. As much as we want to believe in instant communication between spaceships and planets, it's not possible, at least not yet. Modern communication systems rely on radio signals that have a pretty slow speed compared to the vast expanses of space. It would take years for such a signal to travel even 1 light year, let alone hundreds and thousands. If you want to send a message to a galaxy far, far away, be prepared to wait a couple of millennia and then a couple more to receive a reply. On that note, space is not as crowded and full of events as is often shown on the silver screen. It's mostly a rather lonely place where planets, stars, and other objects are separated by billions of miles of nothingness. Even if you have a spaceship that can travel at the speed of light, most of the time you'll only see black void full of stars and planets far away. The distances are enormous out there, even between the closest objects. For a better understanding, the Moon, which you can see so well on a clear night, is about 239,000 miles away. It's like traveling around the Earth almost 10 times in a row. Warp drives that can distort space-time and get you to a distant corner of an alien galaxy in the blink of an eye, that's a staple of any space opera. Spaceships capable of such a feat are always shown as instantly accelerating from zero to faster than light. According to the law of physics, people on board should, well, at least be pushed into their seats hard. More strictly speaking, no one would be able to survive such an acceleration because it's too many G's on a fragile human body. Until we find a way to reduce the effects of overload, we can't even start thinking of space warps. Water isn't the rarest and most precious resource in the universe. In fact, there's a humongous space cloud several million light-years away from us that consists entirely of water. Its reserves would be enough to fill all our oceans 140 trillion times over. And many planets, some even in our solar system, seem to have liquid water on them. The most precious resource in space is life, and that requires a lot more stuff to appear than just liquid water. Astronauts are often shown working out on the ISS and sci-fi space stations, and that much is true, they do need physical activity. But the reason isn't that they need strong bodies to work in space. The gravity out there is much weaker, and astronauts don't use their muscles as much as on Earth. So when they come back to the surface, gravity hits them as a sledgehammer, and their bodies feel squishy. To alleviate those effects, they train every day. Although they say we can see millions of stars on a clear starry night, that number is much more modest, about 3,000. All the rest are other objects that are also luminous and mistaken for stars, planets, distant galaxies, and even artificial satellites. They're simply being illuminated by real stars, just like the moon, and become seen. But because they're that far away, we can't tell if they're stars or not. Still, you gotta admit, it's all still pretty cool. Okay, here's the first one. Myth or true? Carrots can help you see in the dark. Myth. While carrots are full of vitamin A, which helps maintain eyesight, you won't get night vision. In the 1940s, British Air Forces invented a new radar, and to keep it secret, they told everyone it was carrots that helped them see at nighttime. Diamonds aren't a special gemstone. True. While diamonds may be a great engagement rock, they're not as rare as we've been made to believe. Advertising campaigns have made this very common rock something extraordinary. If you want something really rare, painite gems will look beautiful and empty your wallet at the same time. Around $50,000 a carat. Fruit Loops have different flavors. Myth. There's no point in avoiding the color you don't like. All the colors are the same flavor. Even Kellogg's has stated that they all share the same blended fruit flavor. Well, now I don't know what to believe anymore. Dropping a penny from the Empire State Building can obliterate a person below. Myth. While the penny won't tickle, it will not damage anyone on the ground. Simply, the penny can't build up enough speed while it's tumbling to the ground. Better to just keep the change in your pocket. The moon has a dark side. Myth. No, the moon isn't going to use the force to rule. Our satellite is tidally locked with the Earth, meaning that we're always looking at one side. But there's no permanent dark side. Kleenex was originally designed for gas masks. True. Yeah, Kimberly-Clark originally designed a thin cotton substitute to be used as a filter. In 1924, Kleenex began selling in the US as a cold cream and makeup remover, eventually turning into the soft tissues we love today. Chocolate is bad for you. Boy, isn't that a myth. While too much chocolate, just like too much of anything, can indeed do some harm, a little bit can be quite good for you. Not just any chocolate though, only the dark variety. Yum. Weekend sleep-ins will help you catch up on lost sleep. That's a myth. As comfy as your bed is on a Sunday morning, you just can't make up for lost sleep. Irregular sleep can lower your concentration and performance. If you're refreshed when you wake up, you've had the right amount. Zombies are real. True. Now, no human has ever turned into a hungry zombie that we're shown so much in the movies, but they do exist in the animal kingdom. A fungus that has a really long name I don't want to pronounce takes over ants with its chemicals. Under the control of the fungus, the ant leaves its family to find a very specific branch or leaf. Then, it lets the fungus sprout out of it and release spores back into the world. How delightful. The largest living organism is the blue whale, African elephant, or shag. Myth. While all of those are large, the honey fungus in the Blue Mountains, Oregon wins by quite a bit. With the length of 3.4 miles, that's 6.5 Burj Khalifas end to end, and it's still growing. But on the bright side, it's edible. Mushroom omelet, anyone? Turkeys can blush. True. Just like humans, turkeys blush when excited, angry, or sick. The skin on their heads and necks can turn red or even a shade of blue. The fleshy flap of skin that hangs over their neck is called a snood. It also turns bright red when the bird is excited. Yeah, maybe not at Thanksgiving, though. We only have 5 senses. Myth. There's no right number. Some say 5, 7, 14, 24, or even 57. Our most basic senses are actually sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. But also movement, body position, temperature, balance, and the sense of our internal state, like feeling your heart. For example, close your eyes and touch your nose. That's proprioception, or body position. Bats are blind. Myth. Bats' eyesight is actually better at nighttime than ours. They just can't see as well in daytime because they only see in black and white. Perhaps this myth arose from the fact that bats use sonar to navigate without sight. Unicorns are real. True. They're not horses, though. It's deer that are likely the culprit. A single horn can be a genetic anomaly found in some species, possibly leading to the unicorn legend that formed a long time ago. Honey never spoils. Myth. Uncovered in a humid environment, it will spoil. As long as the lid stays on it and no water is added to it, honey shouldn't go bad though. Having antifungal and antibacterial properties means no organisms can live in it. No matter how old your stored honey is, it's probably perfectly edible. Oranges are always orange. Myth. Sweet oranges are a hybrid of tangerines and the pomelo, with a bright green skin to help protect them from the sun. In warmer climates like Southeast Asia, oranges are still a bright green when ripe. Makes you wonder what came first, the fruit or the color. There are bugs in your strawberry frappuccino. True. But not anymore. A dye made of ground-up tiny insects, called cochineal bugs, is used by many companies to make the color red. Starbucks stopped using bug red color in their strawberry frappuccinos in 2015. Firefighters use wetter water. True. To be more efficient at stopping fires, firefighters recently started adding certain chemicals to the water. The wetting agents reduce the surface tension of the water, making it easier to spread and soak into objects. Leave wasps alone and they'll leave you alone. Myth. While this works for bees, their cousins, the yellow jackets, will disagree. Known as one of the most bad-tempered wasps, they've been said to sting unprovoked, even if you just happen to walk by their nest. If you see wasps, give them a wide berth. The Eiffel Tower was supposed to be torn down after 20 years. True. The Eiffel Tower was designed to show off France's industrial power during the World's Fair. The designers cleverly put transmitters and antennas on top to make the tower too useful to eventually demolish. Head lice prefer dirty hair. Myth. Lice don't really think about hair cleanliness. They simply need human hair to hang on to, whether it's squeaky clean or greasier than a fryer. Lice feed off of our scalps, and the hair is just a place to hang out. Camels' humps store water. Myth. Camels don't store water. They store fat in their tissues, just like me after the holidays. These reservoirs of fat allow camels to survive for days in the desert without stopping for food. They drink large amounts of water at a time and store that in their bloodstream. You need to drink 8 glasses of water a day. Myth. Staying hydrated is critical, especially in hotter weather. But we seem to forget that every drink is mainly water, even tea and coffee. Our bodies are the best indicators for when to drink water. Feel thirsty? Then it's time to have a drink. An elephant never forgets. True. Having the biggest brain of all land animals, elephants should have a great memory, and they do. Being able to remember their entire territory, friends, and spots to find water is crucial to the social structure of elephants. They might even have a better memory than you and I. Now, where did I leave my keys? Bananas grow upside down. True. Bananas grow naturally towards the sun as they're getting larger. That's why there's a curve. So does that mean we've been peeling them the wrong way this whole time? Maybe. No number before 1,000 contains the letter A. True. Now you can try and spell each number out if you like, but I bet you're just going to take my word for it. The Guinness Book of World Records was created to settle arguments. True. The world's best trivia book was published in 1955 after an argument about the fastest game bird in Europe. The managing director of Guinness Brewery realized there wasn't a go-to book for trivial questions, so he created his own, and the rest is history. You're eating real wasabi. Myth. When you're sitting down for tasty sushi, that green paste sometimes isn't wasabi, it's horseradish. Real wasabi is very expensive with a milder taste to it. If it's not made in front of you, it's not going to be the real thing. So there. Hi, Do chameleons only change color for camouflage? No. They can actually change colors to reflect their mood. So, males turn a bright color to show their dominance, and they become darker when they get aggressive. Chameleons also change color to adapt to different temperatures. A cold chameleon will turn dark to absorb more heat, while a smoking hot chameleon will turn itself pale to reflect the sun's rays. By the way, do comedians change color for camouflage? Only if their jokes aren't getting any laughs. Okay, I made that up. Now, there's a myth that if you drop a penny from a skyscraper, it'll pretty much destroy whatever's underneath. But when put to the test, researchers found that it just isn't true. On its way down, a coin can't gather enough velocity to cause permanent damage to anything, mostly because of wind resistance and the penny spinning around and stuff. Anyway, just hang on to your change. Now, some people believe that toilet flushes spin in the opposite direction in the southern hemisphere. Some things are affected by the Earth's rotation, like the Gulf Stream or hurricanes, but toilet flushes are way too small. Flushes can spin in either direction, whether they're in the northern or southern hemispheres. Trust me, I know. The biggest determinant of flush direction is the design of the toilet bowl and the water pressure. There's a popular saying that lightning never strikes in the same place twice. Lightning often strikes near the same place a lot more than that. Lightning generally chooses the tallest, pointiest spot as its target. Researchers have found that the Empire State Building gets struck by lightning almost 100 times a year. And quite a few people have been zapped more than once, like a lot more. So, if you're tall and pointy, be careful out there. So there's a common belief that bats are blind. But bats have better vision than humans at night, although humans can see more clearly during the day. Maybe this myth came about because bats rely a lot on their hearing to get about. Or maybe it's because bats see the world in black and white. Now, do goldfish really have short memories? Well, most people put it at 7 seconds. In reality, goldfish can remember things for as long as 7 months. Without a good memory, goldfish who live in nature would never find food. Did anyone ever tell you that a mother bird will reject its offspring if they've been touched by a human? That would be nuts, because most birds don't have a developed sense of smell. They'd never be able to identify the scent of a person. The vulture is an exception to this rule. It has an amazing nose, but then who'd want to touch a vulture anyway? Ostriches bury their heads in the sand when they're scared, except they don't. This myth probably came into being because an ostrich's head is disproportionately small in comparison to its body. So, from a distance, it looks as if the ostrich has its head stuffed in the sand. But if it really did that, it would pass out from not being able to breathe. Another myth is that opossums hang on branches with their tail. The opossum does use its tail to help it climb trees, but its tail can't support its weight. Even a hulked-out calisthenics master opossum could only hang there for a few seconds max. Legend has it that a penguin will fall backward when looking up at an aircraft. Cutest myth ever. Penguins can maintain their balance no matter what, even while looking up at the sky. But low-flying airplanes may cause penguins to flee their nests in panic. Do dogs really sweat by salivating? No, they sweat through their foot pads. But salivating and panting does help them regulate their body temperature. Cat owners may think that a cat only purrs when it's happy. But cats also purr when they're hungry, distressed, or recovering from an injury. Researchers think that purring may be a self-healing trick. Somehow, it keeps their bones and muscles working better. Legend has it that if you run into a skunk, there's only one possible outcome. You're gonna stink for a while. But skunks prefer to flee from danger rather than spraying their magic juice around. That smelly spray's their last line of defense. Before that, they usually stomp their feet and slap their tails to ward off any danger. Did you know there's an alpha wolf in every pack? Except again, there isn't. Unlike captive wolves, wild wolves don't share this kind of social order. They live in family groups, like humans, where the parents are the leaders and the little ones gotta do as they're told. There's a myth that owls can turn their heads full circle, but that would cause them significant damage. But still, they can turn their heads comfortably more than halfway around because of their unique neck bone structure. If you've ever poked a turtle's shell thinking it won't hurt the guy inside, you'd be wrong. A turtle's shell is a living and feeling part of its body, with a complete nerve ending supply. If the shell gets damaged, it can even endanger the turtle's life. There was a time when people thought that unwashed hair was the ideal habitat for head lice. But head lice don't discriminate. No, they can make themselves a home in all hair types. All they really want is a warm scalp. Most people are familiar with the phrase, "an apple a day keeps the doctor away." Apples are good for you, sure. They're packed with nutrients like fiber and vitamin C. But does anyone really think that's enough? When it comes to food hygiene, the 5-second rule just doesn't make sense. There should be a "where you drop it" rule to replace the 5-second one. Generally, if you drop food on your kitchen floor, it's going to pick up fewer bacteria than if you drop it at the checkout counter of a busy supermarket. Of course, that's assuming your kitchen's clean. Uh-oh. Ever wondered whether the story about chewing gum taking 7 years to digest is true? Nah, it isn't. Chewing gum isn't too different from any other food. It takes around the same time to digest, but it's not exactly nutrient-heavy. Legend has it that catching a cold is likelier to happen in cold weather. But studies have shown that weather doesn't really play a part in getting a cold. A virus does. People may experience more cold-like symptoms when the weather is icy cold, but temperature has nothing to do with recovery time or anything like that. Do people only use 10% of their brains? Well, I have some friends who seem to… never mind. No, the answer is no. Scientists who've studied brain scans say they don't show any large dormant areas of the brain. But if the myth is just about humans having a long way to go to reach their full potential, yeah, that sounds about right. One of life's no-nos is to jump into the pool right after eating. But hitting the gym after a big meal can leave you feeling just as uncomfortable as doing a few laps. Also, if you're worried about getting a cramp in the pool, those can happen anytime, not just after a meal. Does shaved hair grow back darker and thicker? Researchers say it doesn't. But shaving does give your hair a blunt tip, which can make it feel thicker. When it comes to color, that new, darker stubble is just an illusion. Some people are convinced that eating turkey leaves them feeling drowsy. It's true that turkey has a chemical that can cause drowsiness, but so does chicken or beef. Turkey's a favorite for those massive family celebrations, so that drowsiness, it's probably due to the huge amount you ate. The myth that people lose most of their body heat through their heads was probably first invented by a hat salesman. Not surprising. Scientists say that people lose only about 10% of their body heat through their heads. You lose heat through your skin, no matter where that skin is. Have you heard the saying that a full moon can affect your mind somehow? And no, but researchers believe that light from a full moon can affect your sleep, which can affect your mood. Did ancient Vikings really wear those awesome horned helmets? There's no real evidence to back up this claim. This myth probably came from books and music, looking to spice up their heroes a bit. If you want to see a Viking with a helmet, go to a Minnesota Vikings game. That's about as close as you're going to get. Some people believe Einstein flunked math in school. Einstein himself debunked this theory by saying he mastered calculus at age 15. But Einstein did fail to enter the school of his choice because he flunked languages on his first try. But math? He passed with flying colors.
A human year is not the same as a dog year. You might have thought that dogs age 7 times faster than we do, but it's not that simple. A dog that's been around for 1 year is, in fact, already 31. It will most likely even have its own little puppies running around. But here's where it gets tricky. 2 human years don't necessarily mean that your dog is 62 either. Your buddy will need to be around 4 in our years before it reaches old age. A 4-year-old dog will be 50, but a 7-year-old dog will be 62, and an 8-year-old dog will only be 64. So, they age faster, but also slower and slower as time passes by. The next time you're celebrating your best bud's birthday, be sure to put lots of candles on the cake and buy even more presents than you normally would. A common misconception is that dogs are colorblind. They're not, but they don't see color exactly as we do. They have trouble distinguishing between their reds and greens. It all just looks like a mash of gray, brown, blue, and even yellowy tones. That's because their eyes lack one of 3 photoreceptors needed to perceive colors fully. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. Wrong. Because of their old age, they might need more persistence from you, but it's not impossible. The key here is to be as positive as you can. If you see they're not feeling up to it right now, that's okay. Let them rest, and in a little bit, you can pick the training session back up. Reward still needs to be a big part of the whole ordeal. After Max successfully speaks, give it its favorite biscuit. Then, it'll speak on command whenever you ask it to. That dog has shoes on. They might seem unnecessary, but today the weather's 90 degrees outside. Imagine walking with your bare feet on asphalt during this heat. You'd feel like you're stepping on lava, and so would your pup. Some dogs are better equipped to handle different weather conditions, but dog shoes can prevent your little buddy from harming its paws. It's the same during winter. When it's freezing cold, you wouldn't just walk around without a jacket on, so make sure your buddy is warm too. Dogs with a lot of fur don't need to get their hair cut to feel lighter. They have what's called an undercoat. In winter, it gets thicker, which gives your buddy an extra layer of protection from the cold. Then, during springtime, your dog will shed some of its fur. It's that same undercoat that will keep your dog comfy during hotter days. When you shave a dog's fur, the new one coming in might get curly or entangled. It might just be better to leave it as is. You can also find different alternatives to keep them cool. Keep it in the shade when they're out, and always bring a bottle of cold water with you, so your buddy's always refreshed. At home, you can put damp towels for them to lie on. If you have a garden, you can also turn its sprinklers on and let Max run free. It'll exercise and have lots of fun. Not all dogs are great swimmers, but all dogs love swimming. If yours can't swim all that well, it might be because it has a bulky chest and a large flat head. In fact, it might not even be able to stay afloat. Get it a swimming vest designed especially for dogs. Some people might say a slightly open window is enough to keep a dog in the car. This isn't true, because after spending just a few minutes in a heated or cold car might mean severe health implications for your best friend. Some states even let you let a dog out of the car if you see it in there, to let it breathe. If your dog can't stand mail carriers, it might be because it's trying to protect you. They bark because they're trying to alert you, their pack leader, that the vicious mail carrier is coming. You can fix this by introducing them to one another. This way, your dog will recognize them as a friend and not a villain. Unlike you, your dog isn't yawning because it's sleepy. Yawning is a way for them to show anxiety. If it doesn't like cats and there's one around, it could yawn. Or maybe there's a new person in the house and Max isn't feeling comfortable in their presence. Or you take your dog to a play date, but they're not getting along. Max keeps yawning because he's getting upset. Yawning is also a way to show you it's running out of patience. It might be time for both of you to leave. Dogs eat grass when they're sick, but this isn't always the case. Catching your dog eating grass when you've been talking to your friend for way longer than you should have probably means it's just bored. They do it to be rebellious too, or just because it's fun. It won't be a problem if the grass isn't treated. Either way, just make sure it doesn't eat too much of it. Otherwise, head out to the vet. Even a little bit of chocolate is poisonous for your pup and should be kept hidden away at all times. This includes cocoa powder and baker's chocolate. This applies to cats too. If you suspect that your pet has eaten a large amount of chocolate, take it to the vet's office immediately. Well-trained dogs will do what they're supposed to and obey commands, But don't think they'll never bite you. It can act out of emotion. Imagine your dog scared. You've put it in an uncomfortable situation with lots of new faces. This has been going on for a while, and Max isn't able to control his emotions anymore. So, a new person tries to reach it to give it a pet and gets punished. Nothing harsh, but it was unexpected. Maybe it felt like it needed to be defensive. Thinking they're protecting and guarding you is another reason why a dog might bite. Or if they're feeling too intimidated by whoever it might be. You've got two dogs and you're about to enter your house. One of them is waiting for you in its bed. It doesn't make a big whoop about it rather than wagging its tail. The other one comes running to the door. It whimpers, jumps, and wags its whole body while running in circles around you. This doesn't mean it loves you more. It just means it's not properly trained yet. Tail wagging doesn't always mean your dog is excited. You can observe a dog's tail to understand what it's feeling. If it holds its tail high but isn't moving it, it's alert but also trying to assert its leadership. Still held high, the tail is moving now. It means the feeling's changed a bit. It's alert but happy. It's still trying to show it's the boss here. But at least it's feeling excited now. When its tail is between the legs, your dog's feeling afraid. Or, if there's an alpha dog around, it might mean your buddy admits its leadership. A tail that's held straight out means the dog is taking in new information, feeling the room. It's not reacting though, it'll stay neutral while doing this. If a dog's tail is wagging fast, it means excitement. The faster they wag their tail, the more excited they are. A slow wag conveys insecurity. It might be because of another dog or person. Now, imagine your dog is wagging its entire body. You even see its hips wagging. This means it's friendly. It might happen when you're in the elevator, and it spots its best friend from the apartment complex. The worst wag of them all is an extremely fast vertical wagging tail. When doing this, your dog can be mean to others. It might be feeling territorial over you. It's best to remove yourself from the situation. If your dog's tail is wagging to the right, it means it's more relaxed. And a left wagging tail means stress.
Eating before swimming doesn't cause cramps. Everyone knows that you have to wait at least 30 minutes after eating to go swimming. If you don't, you might cramp up, or even worse, sink. This is actually not true. Our bodies are perfectly adapted to swim while full. If you do happen to get a cramp while in the pool for any reason, just relax and float. You'll be feeling fine soon enough. Handling a toad or frog won't give you warts. Warts are caused by a certain virus, which is only carried by humans. The myth came about because of the bumpy, wart-like skin texture of toads and tree frogs. Frogs might not give you warts, but they could still be poisonous, so you shouldn't handle them. You don't accidentally eat 8 spiders a year while sleeping. This old myth doesn't have a leg, or 8 legs, to stand on. Most people sleep with their mouths closed, so in the unlikely event that a spider actually made it to your face, it wouldn't even have the opportunity to go into your mouth. If you sleep with your mouth open though, you're most likely snoring, which creates vibrations strong enough to scare any spiders away. Bananas don't grow on trees. We call the plant that bananas grow on banana trees, but guess what? They're actually an herb. Weirdly, they're most closely related to the ginger family. These trees are really just big stem-like succulents, like aloe vera, jade plants, or cacti. Just don't try peeling cacti like a banana. The banana itself is also technically a berry, like a pumpkin, a cucumber, and an avocado. Sitting too close to a TV won't ruin your eyes. We've all been told not to sit too close to the TV and PC monitor or you'll damage your eyes. Ophthalmologists have said that it can cause temporary strain to the eyes, but long-term problems are rare. If you're nearsighted, chances are you're always going to be, whether you sit too close or not. You don't lose most of your body heat through your head. While it may feel that way during the winter, our body loses heat all over. You need to wear a hat because it's more exposed, unlike the rest of the body, which is kept toasty with jackets and thick pants. Swallowed gum won't stay in you for 7 years. You should definitely avoid swallowing gum. That's not something that's good for you. But just in case you do by accident, you'll be happy to learn that it won't stay inside your body for 7 years. You can't fully digest the gum, but all that happens is that gum leaves your body naturally in a matter of days. Our tongues don't have different sections for tasting. There's no bitter, sweet, sour, umami, or salty sections of our tongue whatsoever. This giant muscle can taste everything all over, so you don't have to worry about keeping specific foods in specific parts of your mouth. Fingerprints might not be unique. Sounds terrifying, doesn't it? Well, the reasoning is actually very simple. We can't check every fingerprint on Earth, so it's difficult to know if they really are unique to each individual. Related people can have somewhat similar fingerprints, and there are over 7 billion people on the planet, so it's almost impossible to check. Sushi doesn't mean raw fish. While many people will think it means raw fish, sushi actually comes from a Japanese word meaning sour rice. And it's the rice that's at the heart and soul of every piece of sushi. That's why you can buy sushi with cooked fish in it in supermarkets. Sharks do have tongues. It's a common debate, but it turns out that sharks do have tongues. Just not the types of ones that you can find on people. Most can't even move them around, so it barely counts. For example, the cookie cutter shark's tongue doesn't help much with eating. Instead, it supports some of the bones around its gills. And no, it doesn't make delicious cookies. You can swallow watermelon seeds. Watermelon is the perfect summertime treat, but worrying about a plant growing inside you can completely ruin it. Not to worry, seeds can't survive and grow inside stomach acid. Watermelon seeds are actually good for you. Flies live longer than 24 hours. Some flies can live for a few days to even years. That's right, those pesky houseflies live a lot longer than you think. Sometimes even up to a month. So trapping one in a room won't make it go away faster. It just means that you won't have access to that room for a long time. Fresh fruits and veggies aren't superior to frozen. Having fresh instead of frozen produce might seem like a no-brainer, but the choice isn't actually so simple. By the time that juicy mango or crisp carrot gets to your local store, it's actually been through a lot. Most fresh produce travels on trucks or ships or planes and gets processed. Once it arrives, it's often covered in pesticides in order to keep it fresh. Now, on the other hand, frozen fruits and vegetables are immediately frozen, keeping all their nutrients and minerals preserved. If you can grow your own produce, though, you can guarantee freshness. The Great Wall of China can't be seen from the moon. The only thing that you can see from the moon is Earth, which is mostly white with blue and patches of yellow and green vegetation. No man-made object is easily visible from this far away. In low Earth orbit, though, cities can be seen during the night and day. These include major roadways, airports, dams, and reservoirs. Hey, I can even see my house from there. Lightning can strike the same spot more than once. This myth has been around for a very long time, and it's just simply not true. Lightning will strike whatever is attracting it, however many times it can. This means that in many cases, it's more likely to strike twice. Just watch the Empire State Building during a lightning storm. It gets hit more than 100 times every year. Saturn's rings aren't solid. When you see a photo of Saturn, it'd be easy to assume that the rings are solid, but they're not. The rings are made up of tiny particles of rock and ice that vary in size, from as small as a grain of sand to as large as a house. Good luck trying to spacewalk on these rings. Cracking your knuckles won't cause arthritis. A lot of people are scared to crack their knuckle joints because of advice from friends and family. The most common myth is that it causes arthritis. Well, this just isn't true at all. One scientist even cracked the knuckles in his left hand for over 60 years and was left with no discomfort whatsoever. Waking a sleepwalker won't hurt them. In fact, the most dangerous thing for a sleepwalker is allowing them to carry on wandering around. Getting them back to bed so they don't hurt themselves is the best way to make sure that they're okay. We use most of our brain percentage. We use far more than the myth of 10%. That's right, especially you, Brightside viewer. Although some parts of the brain have yet to be figured out by scientists, we know enough to debunk this idea. We actually turn parts of our brain on and off and tap into different parts when they're needed. Now, we haven't unlocked any secret powers yet, but hopefully we can find something one day. Bears don't really sleep during hibernation. Bears don't sleep for months on end while hibernating. They actually go into something called torpor. This means that they slow things down in their bodies, but are still able to react to any stimuli around them. If you see one sleeping during winter, just make sure to keep your distance. Chameleons change color to show their mood and to communicate. Chameleons are known as masters of camouflage, but they often don't even use their abilities to camouflage. They actually change color to show when they're feeling a strong emotion. When they're agitated and upset, they'll turn black. When they're happy, they'll stay a bright green or blue. The sun isn't a fireball. The sun doesn't burn as we think of it, like logs on a fire or a gas stove. It glows because it's a giant ball of gas, with nuclear fusion taking place in its core. Our sun isn't yellow or white either. It glows green-blue. The human eye sees all the rainbow colors around it and mixes them together to make the sun's famous golden yellow. Dogs see more than black and white. Asking dogs to read an eye chart or to pick out colors would be impractical, but scientists have been able to figure out the vision of dogs. They see the world through a basic color scheme of yellow, blue, and gray, not black and white. It seems that they also lack the ability to see the range of colors from green to red. Chasing a tennis ball has to do with movement and smell more than color. Salt doesn't make water boil faster. That tiny pinch you put in before your pasta doesn't make any difference to the amount of time it takes to come up to a boil. The same goes for putting oil into the water to stop your pasta from sticking. It doesn't work, but it might still be worth adding some if you want to make sure that the water doesn't boil over. Vikings probably never wore horned helmets. As awesome as they looked, Vikings didn't have a practical use for horned helmets. This look was created for an opera costume in the 19th century, and it's stuck ever since. Get the point? Looking sharp. Some Vikings might have used them, but archaeological finds have suggested that if they did use them, it wasn't very common. The ear-piercing sound of sirens brings your relaxing Saturday afternoon to a screeching halt. You jump out of the chair and run to the window. The sky is covered in black clouds all the way down to the horizon. The trees are nearly bent over flat from the gale-force winds. Together with the rain, golf ball-sized hail crashes into the ground, on rooftops, on parked cars. It sounds like a stampede right over your head. Car alarms are going off everywhere. Just then, crack! Huge bolts of lightning flash across the black sky. Then the monstrous grumble of thunder. Your heart jumps in your throat. As you peer through the window at the sudden chaos outside, you're filled with a primal fear of the power of nature. You snap back to reality. The sirens! Gotta get to the basement! You start to turn away from the window, and that's when you see it. A massive tornado ripping along the city street. It's throwing entire motorcycles, refrigerators, and even trees like baseballs. The roof of that building starts peeling off like a Band-Aid. The twister even lifts cars and pieces of asphalt as if they're made of feathers. It seems this tornado will flatten your city within an hour tops. You finally snap out of your hypnosis and run to the basement. The sound of the city being ripped apart terrifies you as you hunker down below as low as you can. But after about 20 minutes, everything is suddenly silent. You head out to see the clouds have disappeared, and the sun's rays illuminate the street. Luckily, your house was spared, but your modern city now looks more like ancient ruins. Stop. Tornadoes never come into cities, right? Yeah, they do. This monster doesn't care where it goes and what it eats along the way. While we're at it, you can forget about the myth that tornadoes will magically stop when they meet rivers, lakes, or mountains. They just keep on going. But about that no twisters in the city thing, about 1,000 tornadoes hit the US each year. That's 75% of all the tornadoes in the world. Most of these monsters occur in a strip, okay, more like a long blob, running up and down through the middle of the country. It's an area aptly dubbed Tornado Alley, a perfect spot for these things to form. You get cold, dry air coming down from Canada, meeting warm, humid air traveling north from the Gulf of Mexico. Warm air is less dense than cold air, so it rises and creates a strong updraft. Water droplets surround it to create the funnel cloud. There you go, recipe for a tornado. Now, if you closed your eyes, spun around, and put your finger on a map of the US, the chances of your finger landing on a major city are pretty slim. If you gathered all the cities in the whole country into one area, it would only be 3% of the US's entire land. Just like your finger, the likelihood of a tornado striking in the city is much smaller than landing in a rural area. When it comes down to it, tornadoes can touch down in big cities. They just hardly ever do, thanks to sheer chance. Another surprising myth. You always see a tornado coming because, funnel cloud right ahead. Not true. The approaching funnel can be completely camouflaged in a wall of rain. You might finally see it when it's right on top of you. In this case, you'd better trust your hearing. First, tornado warning sirens go off if you're in a place that has them. Second, listen for a loud rumble that sounds like a train coming. That's a sure sign this beast is somewhere nearby. Many people immediately start heading for shelter when they see green clouds in the sky, because we all believe it's the #1 sign of a tornado coming. Don't buy it. Yes, a green sky is a sign of a severe thunderstorm that's powerful enough to produce tornadoes, but it's not a guarantee like many people see it. While we're at it, you know how movies show the ground ripping apart during earthquakes? The gaping hole that swallows cars, houses, entire cities? Not a shred of truth to this. A crack may appear in the ground with major earthquakes, but it rarely exceeds a couple feet wide. One of the most overspread myths out there is that lightning will never strike the same place twice. Tell that to the Empire State Building. It gets hit by bolts of lightning at least 25 times a year. Pretty sure nobody's picking the building up and moving it to different locations. Yes, lightning likes really tall things, and it's not shy to keep coming back. As for that old warning about your cell phone or jewelry attracting lightning, busted. There hasn't been any scientific support for the idea that personal objects with metal in them attract lightning. You still shouldn't be out and about during a storm though, cell phone in hand or not. Now, if you're looking for a tsunami and only focused on giant walls of water, you might never see one, even if it's right in front of you. Tsunamis aren't always massive tidal waves crashing into the shore. More often than not, they look like the tide is rising extremely rapidly, receding and rising again until it overspills into the city. Not that tsunamis never form walls of water, it's just not as common. Picture Earth. Are you imagining a perfect ball? Well, to resemble the truth more, squash the poles down a little. There, now you have a realistic Earth. Scientists call the Earth an irregular sphere, or ellipsoid in fancy terms. The planet rotates on its axis, causing the equator to bulge out a bit, just like what happens when you spin fast on a merry-go-round. You feel pulled out and away from the center. What's the highest point on Earth? Everest, of course. But if we go from the point furthest away from the center of the Earth, the crown goes to Mount Chimborazo in the Andes. Its peak is actually 6,800 feet closer to space than the summit of Everest. That's because Chimborazo sits near the equator, where the planet's bulge is greatest. The blue whale weighs as much as 30 elephants, makes sounds louder than a jet, and eats 4 tons of food every day. It's the largest living creature this planet has ever seen. Only, not technically. Head to the Malheur National Forest in Oregon, home to a creature that weighs as much as 20 blue whales. The honey mushroom is a humongous fungus colony united into a common system. The giant covers an area of 1,500 football fields, and it's thousands of years old. Ask anyone to draw the sun, and they'll draw a happy yellow circle. But if you look at our star from the moon or the International Space Station, you'll see that it's actually white. From Earth, the sun looks yellow or red thanks to the atmosphere acting like a filter. Most people think time is constant and moves at the same speed no matter where you are. But the speed of time depends on how close the watch is to Earth. The weaker the gravity, the faster time passes. So the person living in the apartment above you is aging faster than you. Now, it's only 90 billionths of a second faster per 1 foot higher, so don't expect to notice a difference if you decide to move to the first floor. The ground under your feet feels pretty solid and whole, but in reality, the Earth's crust is all broken up into plates surfing on oceans of liquid rock called magma. You don't feel it, but the ground under you is moving a little over half an inch per year. That's about the same rate your toenails grow. Largest desert in the world? Easy, the Sahara. Nope, it's Antarctica, which is almost 2 times bigger than the Sahara. A desert isn't just a scorching sandy place where it doesn't rain. It's a place with very little precipitation, so that includes snow too. In some parts of Antarctica, it hasn't rained or snowed for millions of years. In other parts, snow does fall, though rarely. Point is, there's a myth that it doesn't snow in extreme cold. Antarctica is the coldest place on Earth, and it snows there. There is some truth to this old saying. Cold is drier. It doesn't retain moisture as well. You need moisture to produce raindrops and snowflakes. That's why there are fewer chances for snowfall when temperatures drop so low.
Oceans cover 70% of the Earth. On average, the ocean is 8 Empire State Buildings deep, and less than 5% of its mysterious depths have been explored. It's even possible to find lakes and rivers beneath the ocean. They're denser than the rest of the water surrounding them, so you can clearly see the difference. When the coral is in shallow waters, intense sunlight can damage the algae living inside it. To protect the algae, the coral produces some proteins that act as some kind of sunscreen for it, so they really don't need to spend money on it. Okay, most of the ocean may not be explored, but what we do know is about 20 million tons of gold is dispersed through its dark waters. It's concentrated in really small amounts, which is why it doesn't pay off to mine it. If we could take it out, every person on the planet would get 9 pounds of gold. When sharks need their morning joe, they go to a cafe too. Back in 2002, researchers found an area in the Pacific Ocean called the White Shark Cafe, where great white sharks come during the winter. They simply hang out, tell jokes, and laugh at stories of how many humans they've scared, and then go back to the coast to scare us a little bit more when the weather gets warmer. Hey, have you had a great white latte? Try one. The widest point of the Pacific Ocean goes from Indonesia to Colombia, and at that part it's 12,300 miles across, over 5 times wider than the diameter of the moon. We might imagine oceans are cold, especially in depths where the temperature is only 40 degrees Fahrenheit. But there's an exception. Water that comes out of hydrothermal vents in the seafloor has a temperature of up to 750 degrees. Humans are the only animals whose brain gets smaller. Yup, as we get older, it tends to shrink. It can do so even because of isolation and loneliness. Other animals, even some of our distant cousins from another side of the family tree, like monkeys and chimpanzees, have no problem with that. I'm guessing television is the probable cause. Our eardrums have nothing to do with the sense of sight, but they still move when we move our eyes. In the average lifetime, our heart beats over 2.5 billion times. I've counted. Our nose can detect over 1 trillion smells, and our lips are hundreds of times more sensitive than the tips of our fingers. 2 of our body parts never stop growing: your nose and your ears. Cockroaches are tough. They can survive harsh conditions and have been around since dinosaurs ruled our planet. But the termite queen beats all that, with a lifespan of 50 years. That's the longest any insect can live. Regular termites live only 1 to 2 years. It's not the water camels store in their humps, but fat. They store water in their bloodstream. These can fly really high, more than 29,500 feet, which is even higher than Mount Everest, the tallest mountain on our planet. Sloths are able to hold their breath longer than dolphins. Yup, they slow their heart rates, and they can stay that way for almost 40 minutes. Dolphins have to come to the surface to catch some air every 10 minutes. The moon has volcanoes, and scientists believe these might have been active around 100 million years ago, when dinosaurs still ruled our planet. Wow, the view must have been magnificent. There are watermelons the size of a grape. Cucamelons, if you prefer, mouse melons, actually look like really small watermelons, but at the same time have a citrus flavor. Not just mouse melons, there's also the kangaroo mouse. This animal doesn't feel the need to drink water. It lives in the Nevada desert, and since its habitat is really dry, it simply learned to quench its thirst through seeds it likes to eat. You may think parking is expensive in the area where you live, but it's probably cheaper than a spot you'd pay in Hong Kong. Just a 135 square foot spot placed in front of the center, which is the 5th tallest building in the city, was purchased for almost $1 million. I'll take a bus ticket, please. Speaking of expensive, and I was, the world's priciest hot dog is $169, and you can try it out in Seattle, Washington. I don't have the money, but I am a little intrigued, must admit. An Australian barista set a world record for the most cappuccinos made in 1 hour. 420 of them. That's really a Java jive. You can taste garlic with your feet. Rub a clove right in your feet, of course take the socks off beforehand, and wait for it. The chemical responsible for its unique smell can be absorbed through the skin even though the clove was never in your mouth. By the way, lobsters can try out the same experiment. Well, they actually taste any food with their feet. Okay, researchers have found many things that are evidence of prehistoric animals or our human ancestors that lived thousands of years ago, like bones, teeth, stone tools, and a piece of chewing gum, dating from almost 10,000 years ago. In Tibet, there are black diamond apples that aren't green or red, but dark purple. The place where they grow has plenty of ultraviolet light over the day, while the temperatures drastically go down during the night, which makes the apple skin get a darker color. Australia has a lake of naturally bubblegum pink color. The unusual color is there because of the pigment from a certain type of algae living there. Clouds look so fluffy, like they're made of giant puffs of cotton, but the average one weighs around 1.1 million pounds, so please stay up there. A farmer from Iowa got hiccups that didn't stop for the next 68 years. First, hiccuping was about 40 times a minute, and after a while, 20 times. He actually spent 70% of his life hiccuping. 1 million seconds is somewhere around 12 days, and 1 billion seconds is almost 32 years. Nothing unusual here, just a little bit of good old math that reminds us how cool the time is. Okay, sharks may be scarier than humans, but our teeth are just as strong as theirs, just smaller. Until the beginning of the 19th century, Americans actually thought tomatoes were poisonous. So many tasty meals they missed believing that. Yup, farmers discovered not just people have regional accents, but cows also have different moos, according to the area where they live. Hey, do cows get moody? Giraffes have a tongue that's up to 20 inches long. Ooh, ice cream maybe? Actually, they can bend trees with their tongues. There's a specific type of jellyfish that's actually immortal. Hey, I can see that as a logo for a life insurance company. The Earth is orbiting the Sun, but not at a fixed speed rate. We don't sense it, but it's slowing as time goes by, so our day will become 25 hours long in about 175 million years. So don't plan that extra hour in your schedule just yet. Space is huge, duh. But there's obviously lots of empty spots since there are more trees, 3 trillion, on our planet than stars in the Milky Way, only about 300 to 400 billion. Wow. When someone mentions the biggest desert, you probably picture the endless sandy surface of the Sahara, burning under the hot sun. Well, not quite. The biggest desert is the Antarctic Polar Desert, which covers over 5.5 million square miles in Buffalo. Nah, Antarctica. Sounds strange at first, but the definition says a desert is a place that gets less than 10 inches of precipitation annually. Still, it doesn't say if it has to be hot. Ostriches don't actually hide their heads in the sand. When they sense danger, they lower down their head, neck, and body to the ground, which makes them a little bit less visible to predators. Their light-colored neck blends in with the sand, so it only looks like their head is hidden down there. The first commercial passenger flight happened at the beginning of the 20th century. It was a 23-minute flight that cost $400, which is about $8,500 today, and the plane flew between two cities in Florida. A famous Egyptian ruler, Cleopatra, lived closer to cell phones than to the time when the Great Pyramids of Egypt were completed. Well, that's a gap. Speaking of cell phones, every 2 minutes there are more photos taken than in the entire 19th century. Okay, let's add one more to those statistics. Cheese! Ooh, great news! Eating ice cream won't make your cold worse. Frozen dairy can help soothe a sore throat and give you the calories you need when you don't feel like cooking or eating anything more substantial. Giraffes sleep for way more longer than 30 minutes a day. Their night and afternoon naps add up to around 4.5 hours a day. You can't have a truly photographic memory, even if you can recall visual material in more detail than others. You'll never compare to a film or camera sensor when it comes to precision. A bigger brain doesn't automatically make you smarter. Elephants and whales have brains way larger than humans. We might not have an impressive brain-to-body mass ratio, but 86 billion neurons help humans stay the smartest species on the planet. Light isn't the fastest thing in the world, it's gossip. No, actually, nothing can compare to it in speed in a vacuum, but it slows down when it's going through water or glass. Particles like electrons, neutrons, or neutrinos win in those conditions. The asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter isn't tumbling with dangerous rocks constantly colliding. If you ever found yourself there, you'd see how empty and calm it is. The asteroids are so far apart from each other, the chances of collision are super small. A spaceship radar would detect it and help avoid any risks. You don't have to wait for the spring equinox to make an egg stand on its head. It doesn't need equal gravity or anything and can perfectly do it on any day of the year. Oranges aren't always orange. The green-skinned variety is just as sweet and perfectly ripe. This skin color protects them from the sun and is also a sign that there's plenty of chlorophyll in the fruit. That's why green oranges mostly grow in warmer climates and are sometimes painted orange to look more regular to buyers across the world. More good news. You really always can squeeze in some dessert, no matter how much salad, soup, or meat you've eaten before. You get bored of the savory tastes, but when you see and smell ice cream, cakes, cookies, and chocolate, let me take a minute here. Your brain gets excited and overrides fullness signals for pleasure. Plus, your stomach is a flexible organ, and sugar helps it relax and physically make room for dessert. You have way more than 5 senses. In addition to sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch, there is your ability to sense heat and cold, detect vibrations along air or water, tell where some of your body parts are in relation to others, feel pain, thirst, hunger, time, and many other things. When you call someone using your cell phone, the signal doesn't go through a satellite. Your gadget is always looking for wireless radio signal and transmitting data to and from land-based cellular towers. If you want to call someone, the nearest tower connects you to another cell through a huge network of tower-to-tower communications. Brown sugar isn't any healthier than white sugar. It's mostly white sugar with some extra residual sticky syrup in it. This syrup has some vitamins and minerals like potassium and magnesium, but even that doesn't make it diet food. The Eiffel Tower was supposed to be there for just 20 years. The idea of it was to show off France's industrial power during the World's Fair. But because Eiffel added a radio antenna and wireless telegraph transmitter to it, they decided to keep it. It also has a secret apartment on top and used to double as a meteorology lab. It's also a great landmark for a rendezvous. Green and black tea really come from the same bush. The leaves get their different tastes and looks after they've been harvested. Green tea is withered and heated through steaming. Black tea is crushed or curled and then allowed to oxidize and darken. Honey can spoil if you leave it uncovered in a humid environment. Keep the lid on and make sure no water gets inside, and it'll be edible for a really long time. Its antibacterial powers won't let any organism settle in there. If you leave wasps alone, no, they won't necessarily do the same. Bees will respect your boundaries if you don't try to hurt them. Yellow jackets are so bad-tempered, they can sting even if you're just walking by their nest without knowing it and are perfectly still. So there. Camels don't store water in their humps. They use it as a reservoir for fat to let them survive for days in the desert without stopping for food. They get water in huge amounts on the way to keep them hydrated. Excess water stays in their bloodstream. Owls can't turn their heads full circle. 270 degrees is as far as they can go without seriously hurting themselves. It's possible thanks to their unique neck bone structure. Bats aren't blind. When it's dark outside, they hunt using echolocation, using echoes bouncing off objects to navigate. There are many kinds of bats, and some of them can see 3 times better than humans. They have receptors that enable these bat species to see ultraviolet light. Fortune cookies aren't originally from China. According to the most popular version of the origin story, they were invented by a Japanese immigrant in San Francisco in the early 1900s. Einstein wasn't bad at math in school. He mastered calculus at age 15 and was always at the top of his class. This myth comes from the story of Einstein failing an entrance exam to a college in Zurich. He did great at the math portion, but failed botany, zoology, and language sections. Elephants are really afraid of mice. Like most mammals, they have brains programmed to jump back when they see a critter. No matter how huge they are, elephants will be startled by little things moving fast by their feet. A mouse can't do them any harm, though. Even if it tried climbing up the trunk, the elephant can easily get it off. The sun isn't yellow. It's a bunch of colors that mix and make it appear white. We see it as yellow or orange because the atmosphere of the Earth scatters colors like blue, green, and violet. This is also why we see the sky as blue and the sun looks warmer at sunrise and sunset. Not all comets have tails. When they're next to a star, they look like small frozen chunks of ice and rock. As they approach a star, the ice is scattered away thanks to the solar wind and looks like a tail. Sometimes these tails are too faint to see. Comets can also get a tail of dust and gas particles. An ostrich doesn't hide its head in the sand when in danger. They are the fastest two-legged animals and can outrun almost any intruder or kick them with their powerful legs. They sometimes bend down to eat some sand for better digestion. They also do it to check their eggs in the ground when they start a family. You can sleep outside after washing your hair and it won't make you sick. Even sleeping outside in sub-zero temperatures at that time can just make you chilly and make your hair freeze. Viruses cause colds, and they don't care about your hair condition. The Earth doesn't get closer to the Sun in the summer. In reality, it's farthest from the Sun in July and closest to it in January. It's warmer in the summer because the axis of our planet is tilted, letting its northern part catch more sunlight for half of the year and the southern part for the other half. So, in summer, the Sun is above the horizon for up to 17 hours a day and just for around 6 hours during winter. You can't see millions of stars even on the clearest night and far from sources of light. The highest number you can see if you have really good eyesight is around 3,000 of them. They are the ones that are close enough and bright enough. Some other luminous objects you can spot are planets, distant galaxies, and artificial satellites. The Moon really doesn't have a dark side. It's tidally locked with Earth, so we always see just one side of it. The Sun, the Moon, and our Earth are all constantly moving. So there are times when the side of the Moon visible to us is lit, and then its other side. It only seems dark to us. No worries, you don't eat 8 spiders every night in your sleep. Most people sleep with their mouths closed, so a spider can't make it inside. Even if you sleep with your mouth wide open, the powerful vibrations you produce while breathing and a warm stream of air coming out of your mouth will scare away any little spider. A penny dropped from the Empire State Building won't damage anyone on the ground. It's lightweight and can't speed up enough to be that devastating. The coin's speed does grow with every passing second during the fall, but the air resistance increases too. The worst it can do to a passerby is sting a little. Mammoths were really still roaming the planet at the time the pyramids in Giza were built. Most mammoths had been wiped out around 10,000 years ago, but a small population of 500 to 1,000 woolly mammoths lived in the Arctic until as recently as 1650 BCE. The Great Pyramid of Giza had existed for 1,000 years by the time the last woolly mammoth disappeared. Your tongue doesn't have bitter, sweet, sour, salty, or umami sections for tasting, not even udaddy. Each of the 8,000 taste buds that you have on the tongue, the roof of the mouth, and even in the throat can detect all the tastes the same way. You don't have to worry about putting certain foods in certain places in your mouth to get a better taste. Fingerprints aren't 100% unique. Related people can have somewhat similar patterns. Plus, with over 7 billion people on the planet right now, and not all of the fingerprints recorded, we can't be sure anyway. Your brain has more nerve connections than there are stars in the Milky Way galaxy. It's around 200 billion stars versus 100 billion nerve cells multiplied by 40,000 nerve connections. It's impossible to breathe and swallow at the same time. There's a food pipe and a windpipe at the back of your mouth. When you swallow, the air could take the food through the wrong pipe down to your lungs. The consequences would be dramatic. To prevent it from happening, there's a flap guarding the windpipe. When food or drink is going through, breathing is temporarily paused. You can't hum while holding your nose. You're exhaling during humming, and when both your mouth and your nose are closed, the air can't escape. Sushi restaurants don't serve real wasabi. It would be incredibly expensive, so they replace it with dyed horseradish with mustard. The real thing is from the same family of plants. It's served fresh, grated off the stalk, and tastes sweeter. Your chances of getting it are about 0.5%, and if you do, you'll know it from a super high price. Carrots weren't originally orange. Before the 16th to 17th century, almost all of them were purple, with some rare yellow and white exceptions. Orange carrots have been cultivated by Dutch farmers. They believe they'd be easier to grow. It's true that things appear weightless in outer space, but there's gravity everywhere. The further you get from a heavy object, like Earth, the weaker it gets. Still, gravity affects every single spot in the universe that has mass. Strawberries aren't berries. Neither are raspberries or blackberries. Bananas, eggplants, grapes, tomatoes, and oranges are berries. They have 3 distinct fleshy layers, 2 or more seeds, and develop from one flower. You do have enough iron in your body to produce a metal nail that's 3 inches long. Try it sometime. Wait, don't. Lightning can strike the same spot twice, 3 times, or more than 100 times. Even during the same thunderstorm, nothing can stop a lightning bolt from striking the same place it had struck a few seconds earlier or centuries ago. Lightning prefers tall and isolated objects. The Empire State Building, for example, is hit about 25 times a year. The largest living organism isn't the blue whale or the African elephant. It's honey fungus across the Blue Mountains in Oregon. It's as long as 6.5 Burj Khalifas end to end, and that's the world's tallest building. It's still growing, and it's edible. Turkeys can blush, just like humans. The skin on their heads and necks can turn red or blue when they're excited, angry, or sick. The flap of skin over their necks is called a snood and can go bright red from excitement. During mating season, male turkeys' wattles also turn scarlet to show their interest to females. The Sahara isn't the biggest desert in the world. The Antarctic desert is almost twice as large. The second place belongs to the Arctic desert, and the Sahara is third. The main feature of a desert isn't the excessive heat or dunes. It's the lack of precipitation. The ice fields and rocky mountains of the Antarctic almost never get a drop of rain. Sitting too close to a TV won't make you go blind or give you serious vision problems. Hey, tell that to my mother. It can temporarily strain your eyes, but long-term problems are super rare. Reading in the dark won't make you go blind either. Flies live longer than 24 hours. An average housefly lives for around 1 month. Fruit flies have a lifespan of 40 to 50 days. Over this time, one female fly can have up to 500 offspring. That's why leaving flies in a locked room and waiting won't solve your insect problem. Bears don't sleep for months during hibernation. The processes in their bodies slow down and they don't eat or drink. But they can still perfectly react to any unexpected things going on around them, so keep your distance from their dens. Cracking your knuckles isn't bad for your health. The sound you'll hear while doing it is a special organic fluid bursting into the gaps between your bones. It happens under the pressure you put on your joints and is harmless. Goldfish don't forget everything that happens to them after 3 seconds. Experiments have proven they can do pretty well with their tiny brains storing information for several months. They can also hide from their foes and find food. You can't fry an egg on a sidewalk, no matter how high the temperature is outside. An egg needs 158 degrees to cook though, and a sidewalk only gets to a maximum of 145 degrees. Bananas don't grow on trees. They're an herb related to the ginger family and look somewhat like aloe vera or other stem-like succulents. Chameleons don't change their color to blend in with the environment. They do it to show their mood and to communicate. They turn black when they're nervous or upset, and when they're happy, you'll see the bright green or blue. They use lighter colors to attract mates. Toilet flushes don't spin in the opposite direction in the southern hemisphere. The Earth's rotation affects things like the Gulf Stream and hurricanes, but it has no control over toilets. The direction varies from model to model and depends on the water pressure. Mustard seed isn't the smallest in the world. The record holder in this category is the orchid seed from the tropical rainforest. Some of them are so small you won't see them with an unaided eye. They pop out in the air like dust particles and land on rainforest trees to spread further. Carrots are full of vitamin A, but even that isn't enough to help you see in complete darkness. It can only help you maintain healthy eyesight. Everything in the solar system is always in motion. The moon is moving away from the Earth with each year, and our planet gets further and further from the sun. You're also constantly on the move, even when you're standing perfectly still. White chocolate isn't really chocolate. It's made from sugar, milk products, vanilla, cocoa butter, and lecithin, but doesn't have chocolate solids in it. Cocoa butter is derived from cacao beans, which makes white chocolate a cousin of dark and milk chocolate, but not the closest relative or the same thing. Coffee won't stunt your growth. Whew. How tall you'll grow is genetic. A healthy diet can contribute to that too. Set your coffee consumption limit at 2 cups a day and you'll be fine. Wow, 2 cups? You don't need to wash chicken before you cook it. Doing it can spread germs onto your hands, work surfaces, clothing, and cooking supplies through splashes. Walnuts aren't really nuts. Neither are almonds, cashews, Brazil nuts, pecans, macadamia nuts, pistachios, or pine nuts. They're all formally seeds of drupes. They can't be called nuts as they aren't fruits that have a single edible seed with an inedible outer shell. Diamonds aren't actually that rare. They're ordinary rocks, and extracting them isn't as complicated as it used to be 150 years ago. Marketing and advertising campaigns and artificially raised prices help them to become something considered luxury. Bulls don't get angry when you show them something red. They are red-green colorblind and can only see yellow, green, blue, and violet colors. Movement is what makes them angry and self-protective. So, try to look like a banana. Swimming right after a meal won't give you cramps. Your body needs some extra blood to digest food, but swimming won't revert it from the muscles in your arms and legs, messing up their work. Adding salt to water won't make it boil faster. The temperature of salt water will get higher faster than that of regular water, but the boiling point will also be higher, and salt adds some extra mass to it, so things won't speed up. Kangaroos can't walk backwards. They have muscular legs, big feet, and tails, and can move forward fast but can't go in the opposite direction because of this body construction. They're on the Australian coat of arms along with emus that can't move backward either, symbolizing that the country is always striving forward. Milk won't make your bones indestructible. It does have calcium and vitamin D in it, but no magical bone-healing powers. It is good with cookies. That is not a myth. That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and